Good evening, everybody. Pup here for our Sunday evening review. Got a lot of good setups here and some trades that we are already in that I'll do a little bit of an update on, but let's get started. So it looks like we have a symmetrical wedge setting up for Apple here at a volume shelf. So I do like these types of setups. One way we could play it, we could play the breakout over the symmetrical wedge, or we can, for a safer entry, we can wait for 121.78. I think over this level where we've made highs here and hit resistance, I think having an entry there is probably safer. And we can take that entry up to 128.58 and potentially back up to this 140 level. Okay, next up is AMD. So AMD, we've been patiently waiting for this to move. We've got a nice double bottom W formation here. We did have a false breakout, came back, tested that prior support at 79.14, and now we're making our way back up to that 88.50 level. So I think this is a very simple play. We wait for 88.50, break and close over, and then we target 94.28. Next up is apps. So apps has got a nice setup here as well. I think optimal entry has been missed, but we can take a breakout entry here over 40.92. Which is my first target from that $35 breakout. And then we do have upside targets of $44.01, $47, and $50. And like we always talk about, make sure as the trade progresses, you move up your stop losses. Lock in that profit. No reason to leave money on the table. Next up is BABA. So BABA is setting up here. We had a nice, well, not such a nice gap down, but we've had a nice rounded bottom back up to our gap. So I'm liking this move back up to 290. And if we can get back in our up channel here, this down, this bottom portion of our up channel, then I think 300 is back in the cards, and then upwards of 320. But that would be down the road. I do think we are cup and handling here. And so what I would wait for is the break of 279.94 to enter this gap, and then take the gap back upwards of 290 to 300. Next up is Big C. So Big C, we were buying the bottom down here. I personally added over the top here on the break of this downtrend line. Watching this 91 to 99, or let's call it 91 to $95 level. We have these anchored VWAPs. You have the swing high and then the IPO anchored VWAP. So just watch those two levels, but it looks like we're getting a moving average, potentially moving average crossover coming. So I think we can take this back up, and I think ultimately I'd like to see this back at 100, between 100 and 108 to see how it acts in this area over here. Keeping in mind that anybody that bought up here and that is still bag holding, as we come back into that level, this acts as a level of supply. And so as price moves in, the people who are bag holding up here, some of them may sell, right? So it's going to cause a little bit of resistance up here. So if we do get to that $100 to $108 level, and you did take the trade down here, this would be the area to start taking profit. Next up is CHWY. So CHWY we've been playing on and off for a couple of months now, and I do think we have this nice cup and handle forming. We did get our breakout already. If you missed the breakout entry on the cup and handle, just wait for the retest. If you get that retest and hold, then we can take this trade up to 81.26 and then upwards of 89.50. Next up is Crsr. This is a newer IPO. As you can see, we are pulling back, and I have my pullback entry zone between $34.20 and just about $37. If we get into this zone, potentially retesting the top of this channel here, I think that could be a good potential entry. However, we can fall. If we do get back in this channel, we can fall back to our bottom of the channel downwards of $30. I do like this for a longer term play, not so much as a trade. So I'm looking to potentially pick up some stock on this pullback. Next up is Dkng. So Dkng, you know, we had bottomed out here at 34. We have a nice V-shaped recovery, and it's really strong through this swing high anchored VWAP here. And so now at this point, we're watching $53. If we can get over that 618 retracement from this previous swing high, swing low, then I think we're headed back up to 58 and potentially back to all-time highs. So keep an eye on $53 for Dkng. Next up is EXPE. We had a nice acceleration gap up, and normally when we see these acceleration gap ups, we have a consolidation period. And so that's exactly what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a pennant forming here at 125. If we can break out of this pennant, I'm watching to see if we can fill this gap and then come back up to 139.20. Next up is FAST, F-A-S-T. Just keeping an eye over $50. You do have a downtrend line here. So if we were to break that downtrend, you can take that entry, but it is a bit risky, right? We're at $49. We want to wait for $50. I think over $50, we can take that trade, and you could start to see FAST progress to the upside. Next up is GRWG. This is really just a trade update, just to show you how powerful these signals are. We had a cup and handle form, we had a breakout, we had a retest, we lost the handle here, but we did break back out, and once we broke back out, you know, we did move up. Now I will note, a lot of the times I've seen this happen where we get these breakouts and then you get a back test and it fails. But these two candles right here, really so much this candle right here, this is Wall Street saying, I want your shares, I want your contracts before they send it off to the promised land. So you got to be conscious of that. Don't get shaken out. If you were to take that entry here, use your stop loss right here under the handle. You got to use a wider stop loss for these types of breakouts. Because if you get a pullback, you know, this could be a potential second entry if you didn't take your full position on this breakout. So you get, let's say 50% on your breakout here, and then you get a 50% pullback, and now you got your full position taking it back up. So just something to keep in mind. You know, you have these sometimes sneaky candles that they stop you out, and you know, then you're kicking yourself 2 days later when this thing breaks out again and runs. So just something to keep in mind. Next up is INDB. I'm watching basically $45 on INMD. You could see we did run up here. We had made a top, and then let me grab my annotation tool. We made a top here, and then we made another top and another top. So what happens is this looks like a cup and handle. That's number one, right? And you get that cup and handle breakout. You do the measured move. The measured move brings us right to 53.20. However, when you start to see price come up and we get a failure, and then we came up and we had a lesser failure, and then we came up again and we have a lesser failure, this is an ascending triangle. And so when you get an ascending triangle compressing like this, you usually will get a breakout. You know, and again, you could take a 50% position on the breakout, and if we get the retest, add the rest of your position if it holds. Or you could take your full position here and just keep your stop losses under the breakout level. It all depends on how you trade. I can tell you how I trade, but I think in the end you have to feel what's most comfortable for you and your trading style. And if you don't have a trading style yet, you know, you could follow myself, you can follow Nick C, you can follow Printing Profit, you know, try and adapt the things that we do that resonates with you, and we're more than happy. We're here to help you along the way, so feel free to ask questions. Next up is JKS, Jinko Solar. What I like about this, we did have a really powerful run-up, and now we're consolidating in a descending triangle. And so we did get a breakout. It pulled back, but did close over that breakout level. So if we don't get gap up too hard, tomorrow we could look for an entry at 73.65, keeping a stop loss at 69.43 with a 4-to-1 risk to reward ratio, taking this trade back up to all-time highs here. I think this is an interesting trade. Next up is LAC. So this is a Lithium Corp. Something I put out on the radar last week, we are in a symmetrical wedge. I do have a couple of things going on here, so let me illustrate. So we do have a symmetrical wedge forming here where you've got the compression in the wedge, but we're also forming a nice up channel. So that's something that I'm watching, and as I let that clear out, you could see price has been coiling, and I'm anticipating this is probably how it may go. So something to keep an eye on. It's not the type of play that I normally like to take. It's not a type of stock. It's not. I don't really do commodities or metals or anything like that. But I figured, I like the setup, and I want to put this out for you guys and gals if you like these types of plays. Next up is LEGN. This is something new that showed up on my radar. Forming a nice cut base, still under the downtrend line. I think over the anchored VWAP here, I think this is a good trade, right? 5.67 to 1 risk to reward ratio. If you get in at 30.86, close over that level, we can take this trade back up to all-time highs at $43 with Fibonacci levels up above as resistance. Moving along, next up we have LL, Lumber Liquidators. So again, you're kind of seeing this ascending triangle formation where you have a flat top, and then you make a low, and then you make a higher low, and then a higher low, and then again, you're testing this breakout level. We broke out, we already got the retest. So if we hold, we can take this trade at basically $29.50. I would say even wait for $30. And then we could take this up to $35.78 with a stop loss of $28.06. Next up is Lemonade, LMND. Just something, again, that was called out in the room. You can see we have a bit of an ascending triangle. This is a newer IPO. They are a disruptor to the pet and home and rental insurance industry. But you can see my annotation tool did not turn on. There we go. Let me get that on. No? There we go. So you can see, again, you made a high, you made a lower high, a higher low, and now we're breaking out. So I think over the 618 at $75, I personally have shares. I'm going to compound over this level and look at 84.50 and 95.50 as my next two targets. Next up is MRVL. This is a trade that we were in. I'm just illustrating that our price target, or for myself, is going to be around that $49 to $50 level. But as you can see, we're in a nice channel here. We hit the bottom here, and that gave us the nice bottom channel. You can see topside resistance is going to be here. I think once this clears 46, we make our way to 48 and then $49. Nikola was something that we talked about last week. We had that news that brought us to a breakout. Then we had the news turn not news that kind of had the sell-off. And so, these are very, very volatile plays. So I actually stopped out of my shares. I had pretty decent profit on it. But if this news winds up turning out to be true, we do already have a breakout. We do have a moving average crossover. So, I think, being that we already are at the lows, if we were to even take the trade here, use your stop loss below, I would say around $20, and your potential target is back up to all-time highs at $90. So not a terrible risk to reward ratio there. Next up is NNMD. Not saying that there's necessarily a trade here, but this is really interesting. You had this very large cup and handle forming here. We had a break of the candle. What concerns me about taking the trade here is this gap right here. We literally gapped over resistance. And when that happens, price can run, but not always, but I generally will see this come back for a retest. So just keep your eye on this. It is a lower price stock at 653, but just something to keep an eye on. Next up is Ntes. So another interesting trade that I am looking at. So we did break out here of our swing high anchored VWAP, and we broke out, and now we're retesting. I think if the retest holds, we can take this trade at 92.59 and target around the 100 to 103 level. It's about a 10 to 11% gain using a stop loss of 89.23. I think if we break and hold 100, 110 would be our next level, which is the 300% extension level. Next up is NVTA. So NVTA is setting up in one of my favorite formations, which is the symmetrical wedge. So you can see we are in the wedge here. And so we made a high, we made a low, we made a higher low, excuse me, a lower high. We didn't quite come down to the bottom of the wedge yet, but we may. And this is how I would see this playing out. I think as we get tighter in the wedge, if you were to take a early entry, you could use a tighter stop loss down here and potentially get like a small starter position here and then add the rest on the break of the symmetrical triangle and then use these levels here as your targets. Next up is OSTK. So Overstock is breaking out here. I would just watch this 73.13 level and then the $79 level. I think you can take a trade over 73.13. I wouldn't take a full position. I would add more of a full position over $79.80 level, because then above that, then the bulls are back in control, right? We have our swing high anchored VWAP right here. Once we're over here, we can start making our way back up, to all-time highs, here at 128.91. I think, that's certainly possible in the next, 2 to 3 months. Moving on, we have PENN. So I'm already in Dkng. So as you all know in the room, and for those of you new, maybe you don't know, but I don't like to double up my positions, meaning I don't like to take a position in, let's say, a Dkng and then take another position in PENN. For me, they do the same thing. Even though they're different companies, they're in the same sector. And so for me, it's feast or famine. You're either going to both go up or they're all going to both go down. And so for me, I'd rather pick the winner, or the way I see it, I'd rather pick the stock that I think is going to be the winner in the shorter term. Now, I like Dkng. I know the stock very well. I also like PENN, but I don't know the stock's movement as well. So I went with Dkng. If you didn't take Dkng, PENN looks like it's just starting to get going. So we do have a breakout of this downtrend line. I would watch over all-time highs here at 76.62. Now, I don't like always to take these breakout all-time high entries, so you could potentially wait for a failure and then get a pullback maybe to your 21 EMA and then keep your stop loss down here to potentially get that retest of the breakout. But let's wait and see what PENN does and take it from there. But I do like it. Let's keep it on the watch list. Next up is Prpl. So with this one, I just see an interesting setup. Again, when these stocks kind of run up into these moves and they start to sell off and they start making lower highs and higher lows, it's an interesting trade. Wait for the break of the downtrend line. If you take this trade at 30.67, you might get upwards of $35. It could be a quick trade. Or maybe we get more upside. I don't know, but something to keep an eye on as far as a breakout trade. Next up is PSNL, Personalis. This is something I'm starting to build a position in. I do like this price action, this rounded bottom here. I have added positions here, here, and here. Ultimately, I'm waiting to add my full position once we're over this $33 level. But by building my position here, from here to here to here, I would keep my stop loss under here, like at around 22.50. So my risk is defined, and I think, I like this consolidation area here. So ultimately, if we can consolidate and break this level here at $31, I think we start making our way up. So that's my thesis on PSNL. Next up is PayPal, another fairly simple trade. We have a broadening formation, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're waiting for that fifth touch. So, we are also forming a nice cup base under our 212.45 level. Maybe we fail at this breakout and we consolidate a little bit more, forming that handle before we retest and break out. But ultimately, I'm looking at 250 as my target on this move. Next up is Trip, and Trip will be our last stock. This is Tripadvisor. So, these types of stocks are going to start waking up. So this might be a good time to start building a position in Tripadvisor. Could be getting some shares down here. We have a little bit of an acceleration gap up into a pennant formation. So if we do break out, I'm looking to target 31.35, 36.16, and 42.27. So that's my review. I'm going to post these charts in the chart room in Discord. and I will also post them on Twitter. So if you have any questions about these in Twitter, just leave a comment under the stock or under the stock's tweet. And if you have any questions in Discord, you can DM me, or you can just leave a message just in regular chat. Sometimes I like to say leave it in regular chat because others might have that same question and maybe they're just too shy to ask. So thank you for being with me this Sunday evening. I hope you enjoyed your holiday weekend, and we're all ready to get back at it tomorrow morning. So we will see you then. Have a great rest of your evening. Have a good night.